Welcome to Focus on Albany. I'm Cynthia Pooler, and my guest today is retired County Controller Mike Connors. So, Mike, it's so good to see you. How are you?
I'm great, Cynthia. It's much better to be seen than viewed.
That's good. So, we're going to talk about the report that you had done towards the end of your term, and
Yes.
it's been brought up in the county legislature. So, give our listeners an overview and why it's important.
Well, first of all, the county has, at the time we did the audit, approximately $130 million payroll. And our office is charged with the administration of certification of payroll. My signature actually goes on the checks. So we had a number of complaints over the years from employees, but you don't really get anything hard or solid. So during 2017, we actually started meeting with some whistleblowers, and one of them very highly placed, but that whistleblower did not really want to be involved because of the risk to losing their job. So a second whistleblower did come forward, and we were able to convince them to come forward with their records. And of course, that employee produced over 1,000 emails that conclusively proved the allegations that were made. When we started this whole process in early 2018, we started looking through the time and attendance records, which are in a county's system, Kronos. It's a software system that allows us to track the payroll, the hours, your pay rate, whether you work any overtime or not, any compensatory payments, benefits, all those things are all tracked on that system. So, we had routinely looked at these things, and you run a check on the payroll, you'll do a check on punches or different things. And so, the last check had been done, I think, in January 28th of 2018. And then early in March that year, our access was blocked for the county system. We were only allowed to see our own employees and not the other 2,007 or 800 of them. So that rings a bell and waves the red flag. So we started talking to county employees and Department of Human Resources, and became pretty obvious to the administration what we were going to do. So we formally notified them of an audit after we had looked into the problem of not getting access, and the administration actually blocked our access, and we had to retain outside counsel because the county attorney had then raised legal issues saying that we didn't have the authority to audit payroll records, which is pretty hysterical. But that blocking of legally attempting to block our access to those public records really impinged upon the authorities and duties and powers of the Office of Controller. And the county charter is written to protect the public and also the department heads. So we had to hire outside counsel. We hired Mike Koenig, who was a former Southern District prosecutor and very highly placed on white collar crime with the Justice Department. So over a period of months, I would say 6 months, it took us very gentle prodding and negotiations trying to achieve access to those records. The administration continued to block access to those records. Meanwhile, more and more information was coming forward from the whistleblower, and it became quite obvious that county employees, county tools, county vehicles, county systems were all being used, as well as county employees, to run the then county executive's campaign for county executive in 2015.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Before people started coming to you and tell you this was going on, did you have any idea of the extent of what was happening?
No, I mean, I couldn't believe the extent to which this was going on. And actually, when we got into this, we found so many different problems that you had, it was just an awful situation. You had the Commissioner of Human Resources manually doing payroll for an employee who was being paid for 70 hours a week, but only working 35. Highly irregular and an outright a violation of the county's rules and regulations and law. So after we got into the battle, we eventually were at the courthouse steps on late July of 2019 and gained access to the records. After we gained access to the records, we retained a forensic auditor from New York City, Burden Company, and they specialize in white collar crimes and financial crimes. And they looked at 12.2 million payroll records over a 7-year period of time and found a number of violations of the county rules and procedures, some real weaknesses in the internal controls of the payroll system, and substantiated the findings that we had preliminary found. We were unable to get human resource director or any employees that were involved in these matters to come forward and be interviewed. And we offered to have it done independently by outside counsel, so there'd be no inference of political difficulties, and they refused. So as time went forward, we were being stretched out. Everyone knew I was not running for re-election, so the idea is we'll stretch it out and stall, and that was the attempted administration. We released an interim report in December of 2019, and it was a rather scathing report of what was going on, and it delineated real problems, which eventually Legislator Lakakis found this information to be concerning and has introduced legislation, which is in front of her committee, to change the rules and regulations so that it would be no longer possible for county employees to be used as campaign workers. The whistleblower, who the administration tried to fire, and she retained outside counsel, and they disputed all of the findings that came from her. They said, no, this is not so. This is all false. Well, the upshot of that is after the dust settled in that lawsuit, the county of Albany paid that whistleblower over $100,000 to settle the lawsuit. So, it's pretty obvious that there was a real problem there. We're very hopeful that the legislature will follow Legislator Lakakis's lead, and we're hopeful that they'll protect the county taxpayers by preventing employees from being used as campaign workers.
As of right now, do you think that that's in the works for county employees to work on the county time like they did before?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't speak to motive, but I would, by fact, there were several department heads, and these emails, by the way, we turned these 1,000 emails over to Albany County District Attorney David Soares, and of course, they did nothing with it. During our investigation way back in 2018, we actually met with the head of white collar crime from the New York State Police, and they had been promoted recently and brought their successor. We laid out our 7 findings, and they went through it, indicated that they believed that 6 of the 7 were actual criminal matters, either misdemeanors or felonies. And when he asked, I was thrilled. I said, "Oh, this is great. You're going to help us with this, aren't you?" And they said, "Absolutely not." And when I asked why, that person said, "Because you don't have anyone who will prosecute this crime in your area. The DA will." Then they told us this a year and a half before. The DA won't prosecute it. The Attorney General won't prosecute it, and the FBI has their own problems with human resources, and they'll do nothing either. And as it turned out, not only did they not do anything, but the state comptroller was really not interested in the matter either. And again, it gets back to when you have all Democrats, it's very difficult to get someone to really want to look under the rock.
Okay, so when you're saying you were talking about different people, would you want to name names? There's David Soares for DA, right?
Right, and it was Tish James was the Attorney General.
Okay.
And
And what was her reaction?
Oh, they ignored it.
They did.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, the reason the fellow from the state police had said that he predicted they would ignore it because they have a similar problem Governor Cuomo had some real serious issues with using people, ghost employees, having people being paid by one department but working for him. So there were some real serious issues. And then, of course, as we all know, using state employees to write the book that he got the 5 million advance on, and a lot of other problems came up. So I think that I can agree with the people from the state police not wanting to be involved, because it would have been a waste of resources. Why do all this work, find that a crime has been committed, but there's no one that will prosecute it?
Okay,
And
so let me ask you this, Mike. Do you think that Cuomo realized that, you know, there were people working, on the county dime when it was like campaign work? Do you think
I don't think he knew. I don't know. I don't think the governor knew about what was going on at the county level, but he certainly knew what was going on in his own office, just like the administration certainly knew. And emails clearly indicated that the county executive was aware that these employees were working in his campaign, because he retained one of the people. They were supposed to work for DPW, which is where they were being paid out of. They never reported there. They went to a campaign office and maintained and managed the county executive's campaign. So the county executive was certainly aware of this. Now, there are debates about a lot of things, but when you look through the emails, you'll see there's no debate that county employees were being encouraged to work on the county executive's campaign, particularly the primary campaign, by their supervisors. And that abuse of power is just beyond the pale.
Do you think that if you decided to run for another term, that the county executive would be in more hot water than he is right now?
Yeah, I think that in hindsight, yes. I mean, when I talked about not running for reelection, I gave people plenty of advance notice, and we had no idea that the county executive and his staff would go to such lengths to try and block this. We could have completed this audit in literally 2.5, 3 months with no problem, but because of the attempt to stall it and to run the clock out, it didn't happen. I had already told people I wasn't running for reelection. Now, one of the people involved, that was a serious issue that was found in the audit, was very involved with my successor. So, that clearly indicated to me that my successor was not going to be really interested. And she was pressed by Paul Vandenberg and by people from the Times Union, and dodged it. So I think she did her own report where she said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong. This is everything is wonderful." But clearly, we were able to prove using documents given to us by the county attorney, by the county executive's public relations person, that they paid the person that was in question for 74.4 hours in a week, where the person was only clocked in for 35 hours. In addition, there was problems where people were in positions they weren't qualified for. They didn't meet the minimum civil service standards. There were people in positions as attorneys that were not attorneys, engineering positions that were not engineers. And, there was a host of these kinds of issues. So you need to have internal controls in place. I think the county legislature will hammer this down. There were a couple of people in the majority office at that time who were being paid out of 2 lines, which doesn't show up in the budget reports, nor did anybody know about that. And we brought that to light during our study and our investigation in the preliminary draft audit. So I think that the legislation proposed by Legislator Lakakis is a great idea. I hope that it passes. It'll be very interesting to see if it passes by a wide enough margin to override a potential veto.
And you're almost assured that it will be vetoed.
No, but I'm old enough to suspect that there'd be some reason used to veto that, because 2023 is an election year. And as you know, in Albany County, the only election that really counts is the primary. There is not really a strong or viable Republican Party. It's only recently that a Republican won in one of the towns. Peter Crummey's win in Colony is against the prevailing trends. But, if you don't win the primary, you're not in the election. And quite frankly, Democrats have controlled the political apparatus in the county for literally 100 years.
Hmm. And also in the city.
Yes, started in the city, but they controlled the county as well. Now, to give you an idea, the city's got a considerable budget, but it's under $200 million. The county budget is over $700 million
A year.
a year. So that's a really big budget. I mean, you're talking about in 4 years, the legislature votes on, $2.8 billion of spending. So, and it's going to be even more than that with the money that was given to the counties to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now, we had talked last week, and there was a snafu in us completing the interview, and you were saying that you wanted to bring up a story about a woman that.
Yes, there was a woman in the 14th ward. Her name was Elaine Simons, very sharp, very bright woman, and was 93 at the time when she called me. And I said, well, try writing this, try talking to your legislator, try doing this. And she went through and eviscerated every one of the things that I brought up. And she used a term that I'd never heard at the time. And I said, well, why don't you write a letter to the editor in the Times Union? And Ms. Simon's response was, what? And have the sheeple read it? And I laughed. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, well, sheeple.
Uh-huh.
And there's a tendency when things are going well that you really aren't that involved, or people don't watch what government's doing that much. So people literally are sheeple. And hopefully what'll happen is you've got all this time between now and the next general election for the county legislature. There are 39 positions there, unless there's some major change in the charter that I don't interpret to happen. But, hopefully people will run, and people new to politics, people new to government, young people, old people, people that haven't been involved. Hopefully they'll run, because we've had situations where 25 out of 39 legislators had no opponent, no primary, no general election opponent. So if people are involved, I think we have a much better outcome. And the more competition there is for political office, the better we're served.
Yes, but the elected officials who are entrenched, they kind of like it like that, don't you think?
They do. That's what the state legislature loves, to draw their own district maps. So every 10 years when they do that reapportionment. And of course, the county has had their own problems with redistricting. I ran in the primary in 1991 and got elected for a 1-year term. And the county was in the midst of their first lawsuit that they lost for drawing the lines against the minority population. And I think we might have paid $1 million in losses or something like that. So then 10 years later, the county botches the reapportionment again, and they get sued again. And now it costs a couple of $1 million. So most recently, the 2010 that the current administration drew, they really bollocksed it up, and they wound up in federal court again. And I think we paid almost $7 million in damages and costs to get through that lawsuit. So, and to be wrong. So we have redistricting that's going to occur. Hopefully what they'll do is they'll start at the river where majority of the minority population is, and draw fair lines so that minorities get their fair representation by population.
Well, you know what happened. You know what happened in the assembly district, right?
Yes, I
Uh,
do.
Sam Fine was just like oblivious,
Yeah,
he was just wiped away. And
yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is. It is interesting how it worked out, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know what he got in the last primary when he ran 2 years
I
before,
don't either.
he wound up in Pat Fahey's district, and he was not interested in running against Pat Fahey, so he dropped
Right,
out.
right. So, your first run for office was what you run for?
I ran for Albany County Legislature in 1991. And two of the big issues for me, one of them was about fighting poverty. And because I've been running a thing called the School and Business Alliance and a mentoring program. And the other was about trying to prevent the closure of Engine 3 covering North Albany and part of West Hill, which were in the district. So the first primary I ran in my district was Manans, North Albany, and a little bit of West Hill. And after winning that and being a somewhat independent county legislator, the next district I got to run was, they took my district and split it 4 different ways. So I got a much different district, and one of the county legislators was kind enough to not run, and I was able to be successful in the second run. But it was pretty interesting that if you think about it, the county legislator had nothing to do with the city of Albany fire coverage. However, because of the amount of revenue that the city gets from the county on sales tax, and because of the importance of having effective representation, particularly for the poor, it worked out to be a very powerful issue, and we were successful working with a lot of other people and getting a lot of help. We were able to keep open Engine 3, which the then mayor was trying to close down.
So, since you've been retired, have you kept an eye on what's going on in the county? And do you think, as you examine the newspapers, do you think, oh, I would have done this differently? How do you feel about reading about stuff for your office?
Well, I think there's, other than my being extremely concerned about the people who ran the audit being fired right away, that was upsetting. But, people are going to do what they need to do, or do what they want to do, or what they have to do in office. And, I'm not really big at looking over somebody else's shoulder. I had a great run. I was controller for 24 years. According to the county clerk, then county clerk Tom Kling, I was the longest termed chief fiscal officer elected or appointed since 1686. So I don't think I can really complain about it. I had a great run, and it was a tremendous privilege and a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the job and loved the people I worked with. The politics, I don't miss at all, and I really haven't paid much attention to the politics since then.
Yeah, but you grew up in a political family.
Yeah, well, our family were public servants. My grandfather and father were both public servants, and my mother and father were big historians and loved the study of history. So history is really about the people and the behaviors, and politics is a large part of it. So yeah, sure, I love it. And in Albany, we don't have any major league baseball, football, basketball teams, but the major league sport here is full contact politics. So
That's
of course,
right.
so of course you do watch what's going on with the state legislature and the county
Mhm,
legislature.
mhm.
I do wish we get more people to run for office who are not working for city government or county government or federal government. We need more people who are, I would say, not involved, not owned, not co-opted by other levels of government. And we need more competition for all those seats. So
Now,
hopefully,
you and I have talked about that before. How do you get people interested who have not been involved in politics and say, "Oh, why don't you run for the common council or whatever position?" How do you do that?
you do it one person at a time. And, I always start, and I think the most important office you can run for, and I wish I had done it, but I worked on the committees. The most important office you can run for is school district. It has the most impact long-term on all of our qualities of life. It has the largest budget per voting member of their elected officialdom. I don't know, it's probably 260 million, 270 million with 7 people voting, much larger per person than you have in the common council or in the county legislature. People right now, because of how nasty things are not inclined to jump into it. And you really need to have a thick skin or a high threshold for pain. And I think most of us that run for office are very sensitive, and
Mhm.
none of us want any criticism or want to hear anything bad. But if you can take the pain, then it makes the job worthwhile. It is a great sacrifice for the family. It's a tremendous opportunity for whoever gets elected. And I told people about all that I got out of being an elected official, the people I met, the opportunities to serve, the chances to help people that weren't getting help before. Those are wonderful opportunities. Those are vocational in nature. And yeah, it's painful and it's a pain in the neck and there's a lot of ugliness that goes with it, but it's worthwhile if you do it. And I'll go back and harken back that you can get things, you can change things. We had in 1991 a sea of change. We had 17 county legislators, brand new county legislators come in 1992. In the city of Albany, the majority leader, the chair of the finance committee, the chair of the law committee were all defeated in primaries. So the opportunity for somebody to go out and run for office at a local level can do that. And if you want to make a huge difference, I mean, if you're not going to be involved in a school board, the county legislature is a great place because federal and state dollars funnel through to us. And in addition to running the jail, the nursing home, the health department, Department of Social Services, who is in parens loci for a lot of these children who are shooting each other, there's a tremendous opportunity there for us to do something. And I think that it's long overdue that we need to really start looking at some accountability and doing more to help people become independently successful or financially successful. I don't think that we've been successful in inner city areas anywhere in this country with the policies and procedures to where they're going now. We need to get people some independence and get people back working and support families. And I think that can only happen if you have a lot of people involved in office.
So after I speak to Lynn, she's gonna do a show with me.
Good.
Then I could send that to you, and maybe we could talk about what the legislature
Sure.
is doing.
Well,
Okay,
I'll be
great.
following. This is a piece of legislation I will follow.
Okay,
Because I
great.
did put a call into Lynn and I do look forward to sitting down with her. Uh, this is a good time to have some of these emails reviewed that were ignored 4 years ago. Well,
Okay,
not 3 years ago.
okay.
I think people will be stunned to see what went on and it can prevent it from happening again.
Okay, so you've been listening to Retired Controller Mike Connors. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on Albany. If you like the show, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter.
Thank you.